Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, another Tyranid Learning Curve video for you today, and we are going to be looking at the Trygon stroke the Trygon Prime. Now, I'm not going to do like a comparison between the two models. I'm going to try to avoid that. What I want to do is just run over the differences between them, how we're going to use them, which is pretty much the same for both models, and just sort of have a general chit chat. So first of all, the models. Both of my models, which you see here, this is the Trygon and this is the Prime. And if you're unaware of the difference, basically they have a slightly different head. The mandible things here are bigger on the Prime, and they have slightly bigger talons on the Prime. And well, in the old days you used to have different towels, but now you can sort of take your own towels that you want to anyway. On a side note, mine are all magnetised, everything's magnetised, and I can change them between the Trygon, Trygon Prime and the Morlock, which is what the standard kit comes with. I did make a tutorial, a magnetising tutorial on that, so I'll put a link in the description below if you are interested in that. Okay, so stat wise they're actually pretty similar. There's just a few differences, so let's run through them. So first of all, points wise, the Trygon is 190 points and the Trygon Prime is 230. So we're looking at 40 points difference, and we're going to come across the differences as we go through. So weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 3, strength 6, toughness 6 with 6 wounds, initiative 4 and 5 attacks. That's the same on both models. The Trygon has leadership 8 and the Trygon Prime is leadership 10. And they both have a 3+ save. So pretty similar stats. Now they're both equipped with 2 sets of scything talons, which means their 5 attacks become 6, so you get 1 for 2 weapons. And then on the charge you're going to have 7 attacks. And of course they're monstrous creatures, so you will also get your hammer and wrath attacks as well if you do charge in. So it's a pretty decent amount of attacks. Now not only that, they do have a shooting capability. So the Trygon, the bog standard one, he comes with a 12-inch strength 5, AP 5, 6 shots gun. And then the Prime, he has an 18-inch strength 5, AP 5, 12 shots. So you've got twice the amount of shots, 12 shots at 18 inches. So a slightly better gun on the Prime. Obviously they're not exactly shooty creatures, as you probably imagine just from looking at them. They are generally obviously close combat orientated. Other things that they have the fearless special rule, of course, as they're monstrous creatures. And more importantly, they have the fleet special rule. So that means you can re-roll your run and assault dice. It's a very, very useful thing to have. Now they both can deep strike, and they have pretty good deep strike rules with this, what they call the subterranean, if I can say it, that is, Subterranean Assault. Basically it works a little bit like a drop pod, so it's you have to reduce your distance if you happen to land on another unit, etc. Of course it doesn't stop you scattering off the board, so you do have to be wary of that. Now after you've deep striked in, you would leave basically like a tunnel. Wherever you deep strike there'll be a tunnel underneath, which means anything arriving from reserve your next turn has the option to come through that tunnel. Now the tunnel idea sounds really good and situationally could be quite useful, but it certainly isn't reliable because your units can't come in the same turn. And as you know, stuff coming in from reserve is very, very random. So it is an option, but I certainly wouldn't plan my army around it. The Prime, he has synapse over and above the Trygon. One of its key things, it is a synapse creature. Of course that gives him Shadow of the Warp as well. Now he does have access to the artifacts in the codex as well, which we'll talk about a little bit in a minute. But yeah, let's go back. So Deep striking these guys in is arguably primarily the way that you'd want to probably use them, because if you're trundling them across the board, they're going to attract quite a lot of attention. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't just walk them across the board, but I think it will only work if you have a specific list centered around that. So for example, my Nidzilla list, where I've got lots of different monstrous creatures just trundling across the board, that works because you've got so many different targets. If you've just got like one Trygon just walking across the board, then you're going to have all of your enemies, anti-tank stuff, just like piling straight in at him. And even with 6 wounds, toughness 6, with only that 3+ save and potentially no access to cover saves, you know, if you can get cover save, great, but if you don't have that, you can, you know, lose those wounds very rapidly if you're walking across the board. So deep striking seems to be the best option for them. It's allow you to get into position, and of course it potentially allows you to sort of hide it a little bit, maybe behind a piece of terrain as you deep strike in, and then you can pounce out the next turn. Bearing in mind that you can re-roll that assault dice, so you know, any of those assault dice. So if you rolled a, say, a 1 and a 5, you can keep that 5 and just re-roll the 1 if you want to, just to give you that extra distance on the assault range. So it's pretty good. Now, as I said, the artifacts that you can take on the Prime, I'm not going to go through all the different artifacts because I think their artifacts are pretty much, I would say, a fun thing, really. If you've got the points left over, you know, you could put it on there. I mean, probably the best one would be the Reaper of Blitterax. 45 points though. Yeah, and I personally, I just don't tend to use the Biofacts that often because I just rather have just more minis than sink too many points into them. Now they both have the options for adrenal glands, toxin sacs, regeneration and acid blood. I think out of those, the most useful ones that you're going to use is going to be toxin sacs, which obviously lets you re-roll your fouled wounds, unless of course you're going to basically, it lets you hit them off anything on 4s automatically, but of course your strength is 6, so unless you're coming up to something which has got a higher toughness than your strength, then you're going to be able to re-roll those wounds, which is really useful, and only 10 points, so potentially a fairly good upgrade. Regeneration, we've talked about regeneration before. In my Nidzilla list, I like having the regeneration on these guys. Yes, arguably by the time you bought regeneration on various models, you could get like another Trygon in the list, but it's one of those things really. On a 4+, you get another wound, and that's not just like a one-off. That's at the end of each turn that you have. Yeah, if you can gain a few wounds during the game, you can really make up those points quite easily. Acid Blood, again, I don't think there's any real need to take Acid Blood. Here's a bit of a beast in close combat. I mean, it's weapon skill 5, strength 6, you know, 6, 7 attacks potentially on the charge. It's a pretty decent amount of attacks, and of course, monstrous creatures AP 2. Now, you do have the option to take a couple of Tau Biomorphs. 10 points per Tau, there's 2 options. One is a Strength 6 AP5 melee attack, and the other one is a Strength 1 AP6 melee attack with Poisoned, and that's on a 2+. I suppose arguably if you're going up against an army that's got lots of high toughness, could be useful to have an extra attack, you know, wounding on 2s. Extra 10 points, you know, is not unreasonable, but it depends how many points you want to sink into these guys. And as always, in the Tyranid Codex, it's a case of how many points do you want to spend on a particular unit that could potentially go down pretty easily. Because even though the stats all sound fantastic on this, you know, 6 wounds, toughness 6, like I said before, you know, they can be taken out. I mean, one good round of shooting from an army that's got some decent firepower, and, you know, you could go down quite easily. Okay, so how else are we going to use them, and is it worth taking the Prime over just the normal one? Well, having that extra synapse is a useful thing to have. It can be used as a nice backup synapse in case you get into trouble, especially if you're deep striking. It can come in later in the game. You know, potentially if you've got other stuff coming in as well, like for example if you've got some termagants coming in with the Devourers, and they're coming in a pod, you know, coming with this as well. You could like use them in conjunction to maintain synapse within those units that are coming in. So definitely a useful option, but they're not an essential option. If they're out of synapse and you do fail your test, they're going to feed. So I don't know, it's not that bad if you're going to feed really, but it is all just a personal preference, I suppose, really, whether or not you think you need the creature with the synapse. The big gun is useful, it does help, but ultimately they are assault, you know, units. So I think that's pretty much it for these. We're going to have a look at the Morlock next, which is my most favourite model. So I'm going to change up the magnets on these and put it into the Morlock's configuration, and I'll make the next video. Okay, that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.